Oh, yeah, I think that's doing it. Okay, so now I don't have
Yes.
to worry about that. There's my little thing here. Okay, so we'll wait until the actual time to start. I hope you girls don't mind. I just want to ask Kim Brown a question. Kim, when I was on Unsplash, and you know how you said it's important to copy and acknowledge. I'd love you to go through that with me again, because I tried doing it several times yesterday and it just didn't work for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe after or some other time in the next few days,
Sure.
we can do that.
Hey, Phyllis.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Phyllis.
Hi.
I'm Judy. It's lovely to meet you.
Yes, you too. And I know Kim. Not sure if I know Cindy.
Cindy, where do you come from?
I live in Washington, D.C.
Ah, great. I am. And Phyllis, you're from?
I live in New Brunswick, Canada.
Ah, I love Canada.
I'm originally from Newfoundland, though. I always have to say that. And the lady in the middle, ASUS, I don't think I've met you.
The lady in the middle, that's Annette.
Hi.
Hi, Annette.
I'm Annette and I'm an Aussie.
You're an Aussie. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Di.
Hi.
And so Di is from Adelaide. She lives not very far from where I live.
Hi, Di.
Hello.
Okay, so it's just started 7:30. So I'm a bit of a stickler for starting on time, but I don't ever mind if people rock up late. And we've got quite a few more people who showed an interest, and a few people from overseas who I'm taping it for. I'm just going to try and keep remembering to look at the camera rather than everyone on the side of my screen. So thank you so much for coming and joining me with this group. I've got a couple of people that have actually signed on to do the course so they're not even doing this one. So this is really an introductory webinar to give you an idea of what I'll be doing in the Finding Freedom from Birth Trauma. So I'm going to just start a little bit with telling a little bit about who I am, just giving an opportunity for other people to arrive. So I started Faster EFT probably, oh my goodness me, so 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, at least, I reckon. I did my training with Robert in Melbourne, and then I brought Robert to Adelaide, and he trained here for 5 years with me hosting it. And then Di has taken over the hosting last year. So I'm still very involved, of course, but I'd done enough of the hosting. Now, probably about 5 years ago, Sharon King, who is, according to my understanding, one of the leading authorities on birth and birth trauma in the world. When I'm talking energetically, I'm not talking the pure medical model. And she gets amazing results. So I hosted her in Adelaide, and she did a workshop here. She stayed with me for 2 weeks. I learned a lot of information from her. She was over again this year, not to run a workshop. She came and stayed with me, as it was just like a holiday. And of course, I picked up more stuff. And that's when I said to her, I'm going to, I feel encouraged to be doing this, because I realised what a big impact this makes with our clients if you can actually go in and heal the trauma from our own birth. And I mean our own birth, not just the birth of, mums and babies. And so that's what this seminar is really introducing you to, the whole concept of that. So let me just, I'm going to just let you know too my vulnerability for today, because this is my first Zoom call. I have been on Zoom a number of times, but I've not actually hosted a Zoom webinar. I have run many, many seminars, but I actually haven't done this with the technology. So I'm just letting you know my vulnerability with that this is a learning curve for me, and it hasn't been all smooth sailing, I might add. So if there's any feedback from any of you, I'm very happy to receive that. Okay, so let's get started. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my birth story so that you have an understanding of why I chose to do this. I don't have a particularly traumatic birth story. You know, some people have really traumatic birth stories where I don't. However, when I was just a little girl, my mum said to me one day, I was so disappointed when you were born. And I was like, oh, I was a bit taken aback by that, because she said, you were born 2 days before Christmas, so I missed Jeff's first Christmas. So my brother is about 18 months older than me. So she missed his first Christmas when he was at an age where he would have been, you know, loving it. Now, my brother, when I was 6 months of age, had a major accident. And so my mother, for the rest of her life, and continues to focus on him. Now, he's an amazing man and he's achieved an enormous amount with his life, considering what was the accident he had. Well, even without considering the accident, he's amazing. But it's because of all the attention my mum and dad gave him. But I always felt like I was not loved as much, pure and simple, even though mum did the very best she could. I didn't feel like that from dad, but I did feel like that from mum. So when mum told me that I'd spoiled her Christmas, and she also told me the story of how when my brother had his accident, it was because I was fussing as a 6-month-old baby at the time, and she was looking after me. So you can understand how this little Judy grew up thinking I spoil things. Okay, and so when I did my Train the Trainer course, or EFT, because I was actually started with EFT and did all the training, I met a guy there, and he took me back to my birth and healed a lot of the stuff that I picked up from my mum. And so, and I realised when I did that she was really delighted to have me. I was a little girl after a little boy, so she was just delighted to have me. But all of these years, I had been thinking I just spoil everything for her. And so that radically changed my relationship with my mum. Even though I didn't have a conversation with her about it, it also radically changed my relationship with my brother and his son, because I always thought my mum favoured his son over my 2 girls. And, you know, the reality is she still does, but it just doesn't bother me anymore, whereas it used to really bother me. So I realised that even though I didn't have a major birth trauma, like a lot of people do, it was still impactful for me. Okay, now my parents are still around, still together, so I didn't go through a lot of stuff that a lot of people go through. Okay, so I just want to give you an idea of a couple of clients I've worked with. So, for example, Marnie. She came to me because she was having real difficulties with men. She was, you know, with the love relationship. She was blocking the loving. She had a lot of fear. She felt that she was always on her own. She flipped up a guard. So I actually got her intake out and just checked for her actual words. These are not things I'm making up. She was anxious. She was nervous. She had a nervous breakdown. She was constantly crying. She was only in her early 30s, feeling that she was missing out on everything, but really anxious about the love part of the relationship. Now, she had done a lot of work with other people before coming to see me. And so then I asked the question, which I often do now, is, tell me what was happening when you were in the womb. And she said, well, I know my father had a lot of rage. He was a sex addict, and he had a sex schedule with my mother. She said from the age of 4 years, I remember him saying, where's my pussy? And listening to all of his sex stories. So I go, okay, so we need to go and clear it at the source. As I often say to people, our unhappy stuff, it is like a tree. It's like a dead tree with all these branches on it. And we can go and pick off all the little branches, you know, when Dad said this and this story about Dad, and then at 4.5 years of age, Dad left. He just caught a plane and never came back. But she caught up with him when he was a bit later, you know, from about 7 or 8 years of age. She'd have to go and stay with him, and there were always new women and always new sex stuff that she was being a witness to, not a participant of, you know, but hearing about. So you can pick up all these little branches and yeah, you'll make a change in that person's life. But if you can get into the roots and pull it all out, you'll do it much more quickly and effectively. And this is where the birth stuff comes in, because we pick up stuff in the womb. So when we were actually in the womb, these were her exact words that are recorded. I'm going to have a hard time here, you know, actually when she's going to be born. This is a dawning moment. There's so much darkness here. It's like mud, layer after layer of mud. So that's what we cleared, and we did it, well, we did it from the womb. Okay, so that was a very successful session. She went on and her life changed as a result of that. Now, I'm not discrediting all the other work she'd done with other practitioners, because all of it helps. I think my most unusual one was a lovely lady that came to me and she said, Judy, I have a broken heart. She said, no, she didn't say I had a broken heart. I asked her that question. She said, I have to have heart surgery. I'm really, really scared. And she said, what can you do? And I'm going, in my head, I'm going, oh my God, that's a big call. But I said to her, so when did you have a broken heart? And she said, well, and she backtracked. So she's a woman who's around about my age. She's single. She has no children. And she when she said, well, you know, I said, well, so when was the moment you think that? And she said, well, you know what? I think it was something I picked up when I was a little girl. And I said, why is that? Because her older brother had died when he was only a very, you know, soon after he was born, about a week or so, I think. Then there was some girls. Then there was a huge gap. And then I think she was what they call a menopause baby. So mum was really anxious the whole time because she was so much older. And she kept replaying all the stuff that had happened with her little boy dying, because she was so anxious something like that would happen again because she was so much older. So we worked on all that. Well, I took her back into the womb. We worked on her mum. We worked on her dad. We worked on all the grief and loss in relation to the baby dying. And then what happened was she went off, and I'm going, well, I don't know if that did any good, but, you know, she was happy. 6 weeks later, she actually went to the doctor. And in fact, I've got it. I just popped it onto my phone yesterday so I could read it out to you, and I didn't actually get it back up. I'm just having a quick scroll through now. Anyway, I can remember it. She said to me, I've just come out of the doctor's surgery, and the doctor says I no longer need surgery. She said, my heart, which was on the high end of possibility for a heart attack, she said it's on the low end now. And she said, the only thing I have done that was different was that session with you. So she said, I'm not surprised because I've healed my broken heart. That was a really pivotal moment for me of realising how this work can contribute to people's healing, even though that happened like 50 years ago for her. So I spoke to her a couple of months ago, and she said to me her heart is now completely better. And she also said, oh, it's not just Faster EFT that did it. I said, no, that's totally fine. I don't care what did it. And she said, because I've now found a doctor, which was after the work we did, who does more natural remedies. And he's been helping too. I said, fantastic. Faster EFT is not standalone. You marry it with other things. You know, like you can't expect to lose weight with Faster EFT if you don't also eat well. So it's a combination of stuff. Okay, so so the embryo. So research shows that very soon after conception, a level of consciousness exists in the embryo. I'd like to say, just because there were probably about 20 people who booked on to this call, and there's not that many here as far as I can see. So if anyone does want to unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free to do so. If there was a really big group, I guess that wouldn't work so well. So even at the embryonic stage, they now know that there is a level of consciousness that exists. So if you've got, as the fetus is developing, It's subconscious. As that develops, it just stores information to prepare itself for the mother's environment. But the father's role in relation to the mother is also really important, as you will see. So by the 6th month, the fetus can actually hear, it can actually move in rhythm to the mother's voice. So imagine the influence this has if the mother is happy and singing and joyful or yelling in anger. So it's no surprise that sonograms, now sonograms are to do with the audio. Sonograms taken while parents yell at each other show that the baby flinches in agitation. Imagine the damage caused by months and months of this, of feeding that negative energy into the fetus. Now, I'd like to acknowledge Sharon King again here, because she told me a story of some research that was done many years ago in relation to the father. Now, we would assume that most of the impact on the fetus and is in actual fact the mother, and that is true. But in actual fact, fathers do have quite a role to play here. And Dr. Bruce Lipton says, when a woman goes to the doctor, yes, of course, he needs to find out blood pressure, etc., etc. But he said, what I'm really wanting her to find out, the doctor to find out, is what's happening with the woman emotionally. What's her relationship like with other people? How is she being treated by a partner? What sort of support is she getting? He said, these are the things that are absolutely pivotal to the development of the child. And I think in the past, we haven't taken a lot of notice of that. So in this research that happened, there was a couple who lived, I'm not sure if it's the UK or America, but they sent but the father was coming on business to the furthest ends of the world, which happened to be Australia. And while he was here, he agreed to undergo some very mild electric shock treatment because they wanted to work out whether that had any impact on the baby at all. Now, at the very moment he received the shock, the baby, who was on a ultrasound, went into spasm at exactly the same moment. So from that, they were really surprised. They did not ever expect that to happen. Now, Sharon has written a book called Magical New Beginnings, and I said to her, I don't see that story in the book. And she said, no, because I contacted the professor who told me that story, and he just didn't get back to me in time. So she said, I didn't get that put into the book. So I just thought that was fascinating, because men have a major role in the emotional development of the child even before they're born. So it's frightening, isn't it? In fact, studies show a bad relationship between parents increases the child's risk of psychological and physical damage by a startling 200% or more. To me, that's just astronomical. So therefore, as a fast EFT practitioner, if we can be working with pregnant women, and I've got a number on my books at the moment that I'm working with, and actually getting them to release all their anxiety before it overwhelms them, that's really good for the future of their baby. Now, you've probably all heard of Bruce Lipton. He's a cell biologist. He's one of the first ones that did the stem cell research. And his quote here, and I quote, thoughts perceived by their mothers before birth allow the unborn infant to optimize their genetic and physiological development. So if you research his work at all, and in the actual webinar, I'll be doing a whole section on his work and giving a handout for that, because that I find is really interesting for your clients, especially if they are expectant mothers. Now, the Institute of Heart Maths has done some research too. So what they do is they're dedicated to researching stress and emotional management, and they use placental DNA. And they had 28 researchers, and these researchers were all specially trained in how to generate and feel strong emotions on demand. And then they were given a vial of placental DNA. The researchers found that each placental DNA sample changed shape according to the researcher's feelings. So, for example, a happy woman, when the researchers felt positive emotions like love and joy and gratitude, the DNA responded. It actually relaxed the strands, they unwound, and they actually lengthened. Now, when this is happening, even when it happens with us now, when we feel the joy and the gratitude and the love, what actually happens, the telomeres, which are on the ends of the DNA, start to develop and grow. Now, these telomeres are actually really important. As we age, the telomeres start to shrink. And once we have no telomeres, we don't exist. We die. The body can't exist without them. So Greg Braden actually says if you can connect to the heart and the mind each day, and all you do for that is you put your hand on your heart and you breathe in deeply, and you just connect with that love in your heart and think of some things that you're grateful for. He said you're actually, every time you're doing that, you're strengthening the telomeres on the strands of your DNA, which actually helps you to stay younger for longer. So I think that's some really good advice. And I try and do that. I don't do it every day, but I certainly aim to. And I'm very aware that when I'm feeling good, that happens. Now, when we have anger, now I know this woman looks extremely angry, but there are a few times I've looked like that. When the researchers felt the negative emotions like anger, fear, frustration, or stress, the DNA is tightened up, became shorter, and even switched off many of its codes. So this is the DNA of an embryo. Okay, so this is the effect that this is having on the child. So I've worked with women who were very anxious during their pregnancy, and when I've had the little, and I've actually worked with them because they've got an anxious baby, and that has helped the baby enormously. Okay, so when researchers, once again, after feeling the anger, then felt the positive emotion, the code switched back on. How good's that? So a mother can feel angry. So this is important for women to understand that it's okay to feel angry. You can't be happy the whole 9 months of your pregnancy. That just doesn't work. So, you've got to feel your emotions, but we've got this amazing tool for them now with Faster EFT and even normal EFT, and certainly matrix reimprinting too. We've got these enormously wonderful tools where we can actually encourage them when they've finished their little spurt of anger to tap, to clear it all, because then the baby's it's all switched back on for the baby. The thoughts and the effects have a huge impact. So I'm just wanting to now go through a little bit of the course that I'll be doing. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick drink. So the first week is all the information that you will need about parents as genetic engineers. And because we actually do know that many of our beliefs actually begin in the womb. I'll be going through the hidden story behind difficult behaviour, how it's often linked to birth trauma. So this may be actually around the trauma of the actual birth, but it also can be around the trauma of the experience in the womb. I have a girlfriend whose daughter has 3 children. Now, this is a beautiful woman, but she never ever wanted children. It was just nothing remotely interesting to her. She was definitely a career woman. She got pregnant, and it was an incredibly traumatic pregnancy for her, but it was also an incredibly traumatic birth. So she almost died at birth, and she had her child was an incredibly anxious child. That child is now 9, still very anxious, and has behaviours like she'll often go and sit on her own at a family function. That the grandparents might take her out for coffee or like a hot chocolate after they pick her up from school, and she won't even go and sit with them. She'll go and sit on her own, and she won't drink anything. She'll just sit on her own. So, as my girlfriend says, this is a really anxious child. Because they had one child, her daughter decided, well, we might as well have another one. And they went into that pregnancy with a very different attitude. And that little one is a happy little soul. Then 7 years down the track, she gets pregnant again. And I said to my girlfriend, your daughter's very, very clever. Has she not heard of birth control? Anyway, and she was incredibly distressed again. She did not want another child, but she went ahead and had it. And so all the stressors and all the fact that doctors did not want her to have another child because birth puts her at serious risk. But she went ahead and had it. She now has another very anxious child. And so to me, that's just confirmation. That could be coincidence, but to me, that's just confirmation about what's happening. Now, I had a mum come to me and her little 6-year-old was pooping his pants. And so she was seriously pissed about it. And she wanted me to work with him. And I said to her, at the age of 6, I want to work with you. So she came to see me and she was very, very reluctant. But we did the work. And I went back and I said to her, so tell me about what's happening in your family and in the relationship and all of that. I knew she was not going to be coming back for many sessions. So I wanted to get to the roots of it. I didn't want to be breaking off branches of the tree and just working on her and her husband's relationship and stuff like that, which sounded to me as though there were lots of fights and arguments. And the time in the womb was very much the same. So I went in there and I did all the stuff of her being pregnant with her little boy. I tapped away all the stuff that was happening in her life with him at that stage. And we did his whole birth and reconnected her to him at that birth process. She came and saw me again 6 weeks later, but I only saw her twice. And she wanted to work on stuff with her and her husband this time. And I said to her, how's your little boy going? She said, oh, he's fine. Why? And I'm going, well, what about pooping his pants? And she goes, oh, he doesn't do that. I said, oh, that's what you came to me for first. And I actually have my notes there. Oh, that's right, I did. And I said, so when did he stop? And she said, well, hasn't done it since our session. So we cleared that up. We cleared up the anxiety because, I mean, you all realise we are so connected to our children, and especially when they're very little, they have a very strong heart connection to their mums and their dads. So we cleared it up at the roots of the problem. And I think this is one of the great benefits of doing this work. Week 2 and 3, I provide an introduction to the way in which babies and children may be adversely affected by their experiences at birth. So we're talking here things like, cesareans, forceps delivery, induced pregnancy, because each of them actually have different repercussions for the child, long-term consequences, and these consequences don't always show up until maturation. So Sharon talks about a client that she worked with who came to her with migraines. Now, she specialises in doing the birth work. And so she took him back and healed his birth and found out when she discussed it with him that he was a forceps delivery. So she worked on changing that whole memory so that he was no longer a forceps delivery with all this pressure on his head. And he no longer had migraines after that. So, intervention had done. I'm not saying we don't have intervention. I know at times it's absolutely necessary, but there are often consequences of that. And the beautiful thing is we can heal that for people now. It's just such amazing, rewarding work. I don't know if any of you know of this book. It is my go-to book now. It's Yvette Rose's Metaphysical Anatomy. It's quite expensive. You got it, Cindy. It's great, isn't it? It's quite expensive. But So Cindy, you would probably give me the nod here. When you go through here and you actually look at the key points in many of the problems, it goes back to birth trauma. I would say at least 50% of the time. I think that's a big underestimation. But so often it's birth trauma, what happened in the womb, what happened at birth. So if you haven't got this book, I recommend it if you're serious about being a practitioner. I mean, this is my full-time job. I'm a fast EFT practitioner. It's my full-time job, so I'm serious about the work. So also how to work with baby in relation to their birth trauma. I'll go to in detail what I did with my daughter. Now, I love my daughter. Of course I do, but I think she thinks I'm a bit wacko. So when she was pregnant, So she was 34 when she was pregnant, had a bit of difficulty getting there, but, you know, it all happened and it was just so exciting for us all. And I was giving her information and stuff like that, and it was like, yeah, Mum, where's the scientific evidence for that? And so I just basically said, oh, okay, that's fine. You know, you're an incredibly clever woman, you know. And then she rang me one day and said, Mum, I think I'll do a calm birthing course. And I'm going, yeah, I'll pay half of it for you. So she did it, and then she rang me, and, you know, $500 later, she rings me and goes, Mum, it's just all that stuff you were telling me. I said, oh, that's good. Did you like it? She said, yeah, it was amazing. But she, even with all the calm birthing, everything went wrong for her. And, you know, even though she said at the end, please don't cut the cord. I want all the stem cells to go into the baby and stuff like that. So it already done. It was around the baby's neck twice, and the baby was blue and wasn't breathing, and she hemorrhaged. So it was a pretty dicey situation. And she realised that after doing the calm birthing course. So when my daughter was when the baby was about 6 weeks of age, I actually went and redid all of that for her. And just in case she ever wanted another child, but also for our little baby. And while she was holding the baby, I redid her whole birth process. So I'll be going through how to do that too. And we have a happy, happy little girl. So we'll be discovering how many behavioural and learning difficulties in older children and adults often can be traced back to actually birth patterns. And we'll be learning how birthing interventions and their possible long-term effects and how to rewrite these. So I'm just going to read here. One potential long-term effect of the use of interventions, such as forceps, is that the baby learns to perceive any touch or contact on its head as being cold, hostile and threatening, and immediately becomes distressed. This may even lead to, over time, to lead to avoidance or even rejection of touch and or intimacy. So these are some of the things that can happen. And our little baby was a forceps delivery, so I had to basically unpack all of that stuff for her. Okay, so we're learning about the mother's effects on the baby's brain. So the mother's emotional well-being and how that affects the baby brain. Understanding implicit memory, which is long-term memory, which is used unconsciously and affects our thoughts and behaviours. It's not something we actually have control over. It's all stored unconsciously. It just pops out. And its relevance to womb and birth trauma. And also we'll be understanding the implications of separation at birth. And what this means is where the mother, so for example, with my daughter, she was in emergency, the baby was they were separated at birth. So I had to rewrite all that too. Now, they were only separated for maybe an hour or two, but, or it may have been a bit longer, but that's certainly, and a lot of us were separated at birth. In fact, probably anyone over probably the age of 40 was separated at birth. And, you know, the mothers had them for often only a few moments, and they were taken off and weighed and all of that sort of stuff. Abortion survivors is a really interesting one. So I do some work on that. And this is not just about a woman who attempts an abortion and it doesn't work, because I don't really think that happens very much now, but it certainly happened in generations past. But this is women who do not want their baby and they're seriously upset and anxious about it, and would have preferred to have had an abortion but choose not to. So my girlfriend's daughter, her little one fits into this category, because I cannot explain how much this girl did not want children. Now, that doesn't mean she's not a good mum, but she's still an anxious mother, even though she runs an amazing career. I've done quite a bit of work with people who've been adopted, and even though you might go now, well, there's not so many people being adopted now, in actual fact there are a lot of people being adopted, but they're mostly from foreign countries. So we in Australia now, and I'm assuming Europe and the US and Canada are similar, that you're adopting quite a lot of Asian children. For Australia, it's often Thai, Korean, etc., etc. Now, I was working with someone only this week. I love it. I love this work because I'm always learning. And she actually, her daughter's doing some sort of research work, and she actually said that the language of the adopted mother and the language of the birth mother, if they don't match, that actually has serious implications. And so I've actually asked her for the actual research. So I want to be able to present that, because actually in that session, I worked out a way, I was very excited, I worked out a way to completely change all that. That was such a sweet moment. So I'll be showing you how to do that. Because like I've got a young girl that I'm working with at the moment. She's probably 32, and she's actually adopted from Sri Lanka. And so I only found this information out this week. So I actually am going to go back, and I've done her birth because I really needed to. It really helped her enormously. But I'm actually going to go back and just add this to it. I'll add that onto a session and just take her back into the womb. And maybe just spend 20 minutes redoing this actual part, getting back into that stage and redoing this little part, because I can see how important it is. Okay, you'll be discovering some strategies for parents of children who have had birth trauma. So this is where the actual mum has had birth trauma as well. You'll be discovering how to release the birth trauma for the mother. So I've had a number of women that have come to me just terrified of having a baby because the first birth was so horrendous. I had one woman, the first one I actually ever did, she had two little boys, and then she was pregnant again, and she was so anxious because the two boys' births had both been really difficult. And the doctor said, because the second one was so difficult, don't expect the third one to be, a piece of cake. And so I cleared all the... So what I did was I actually cleared both the first births, which has implications for her children, the two little boys. And she was able to give me the feedback of how that had helped them. I cleared it for her, and then I future paced with the baby in the womb. I future paced that baby into the new life experience for that baby. The birth that she had was just textbook, picture perfect. In actual fact, I've done it with, I think it's 12 people. I'm waiting on one to have her baby. She's due to have her baby any day now. In fact, I taped her when I did her birth, because it's, you don't often have access to a pregnant woman, and I'll be actually showing that as a demonstration for you and going through bits of what I did and why I did it. So you'll actually get to see exactly how to do it. And out of every one I've done, so far, fingers crossed, 100% have worked out exactly as we future forecast for that child and that baby, by communicating with the baby and letting it know what its mother wants, but clearing all the trauma first. You have to do that first. So I'm not saying it's foolproof. I'm not saying it's the actual reason why it's happened. Might be coincidence. I really don't care. It's it's so far it's 100%. So I'm just got my fingers crossed with this next one, that she has, the birth that she would love to have. I actually sent her a text yesterday, say, how's it going? Any day now. Okay. So we re-imprint the birth so that the client feels connected and complete. This is a really important part, so that the actual person feels totally connected with themselves, because I find that quite often when I go in, that we find the baby's actually quite disconnected from themselves and from their mums because of everything that's happened. They've just learned to switch off. As I said, with that young woman I'd worked with, whose father was I guess he's not a sexual predator, because he was only with the women in his life at the time, but he was, he was very demanding. And when she was in the womb, she could just feel all this mud around her. So it's really important to be able to go and clear all that. We also look at the bonding instincts. The cingulate gyrus is a part of the brain. It's behind the eye. It's just this tiny little thing behind the eyes. And it's a really important part of the brain, and you've got about a 20-minute period after birth to activate this. So even though you might be with a woman who's had the bonding with the baby, I still always do this, because if you, like, our generation wouldn't have had it done. And so I remember after I had my birth experience redone, I felt like I was walking on air for days after. I just felt fantastic. And I've had that report from others. So the cingulate gyrus it just lies dormant. It doesn't die, it just sits there dormant. And it reminds me of being the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious brain. So it just keeps us a bit more balanced. It also really helps us with bonding with people. So I show you, demonstrate how to activate that, because it's never too late. That's the beautiful thing with Faster EFT, isn't it? It's never too late to heal. So what will you receive is, if you choose to do this course, you receive all the step-by-step notes to use with your clients. So when I do the birth, when I run a Faster EFT session, I don't have any notes of how to do it. I just have the intake. I've done it so many times, I can do it in my sleep. Okay, so when I do the birth, I actually have notes, because I don't want to miss a single step. Because at one stage I thought, oh, I've done this so many times, I can, because although I've done, I think 11 or 12 pregnant women, I've done many, many, many clients for the birthing process with some wonderful results. But so you will actually receive step-by-step notes. And I even use my step-by-step notes now, because it's a slightly different process than the normal Faster EFT. However, it is still Faster EFT. But if you're not a Faster EFT practitioner, you can still use it and put your hypnosis or normal EFT or whatever in it. You will actually learn 2 variations of the technique for clients. Now, I've done this as much as anything for Robert, because I know Robert's not into so much into the metaphysical beliefs. I'm not saying he doesn't believe, but he keeps Faster EFT as body-mind. He doesn't really do, the heart connection so much to that extent. And so, but a lot of the clients I get actually have metaphysical beliefs. They actually totally connect with a higher source. I'm not saying Robert doesn't, I know that he does too. But he wants us to keep Faster EFT clean, so to speak. So I have 2 different versions. So if I know I've got a bloke in front of me who's, not into the metaphysical stuff, I don't include that. And then if I've got a bloke who's really into the medical physical stuff, I include that. That also includes their life contract, which means what they're here to heal in this lifetime, what they're here to experience, what they're here to learn, and what they're here to release. And we find that out. I've never not had a client not just pop up with all the stuff as we're connecting with our higher self when we're actually in the womb. I take them back to the moment just before conception for that. But so I'll give you both variations, but I play that. You will be able to judge that. I can judge that really easily with clients. And you know what? If in doubt, I just do it. And I've never had anyone say, I didn't like that part of it. And now I always let people know that if anything comes up that's useful for them, I record it for them. I jot it down so that they're not having to, oh, what was that? I've got to try and remember that, because they'll all want to know it after. And it's interesting because quite often what they're here to experience is the very opposite to what they come down with. So I'll give you an example. Wayne Dyer, and you've probably all heard of him. He gave a beautiful, I guess, a metaphor of this. He said he was up in spirit looking down, and he's going, and God's next to him, and he goes, what would you like to do down there? And he said, I want to teach people how to be independent. And God looks at him and goes, you sure about that? That's a big call. He said, yeah, that's what I'd really like to do that. And he said, well, okay, you sure about this? Yep, okay, I'm sure. And so he said, so they stuck my sorry little ass into an orphanage. He said, when Mum had me, Dad ran off with everything, leaving 2 little boys at home. And when Mum arrived home with the new boy, little baby, her 3rd little baby, there was nobody and there was nothing there. I believe he stole all the money and everything he could lay his hands on, all the jewelry and everything. So Mum, and it was in the time before, I guess, Social Security. I know in Australia we have really good social security. I'm not sure where he lived that they did. So she had to put them into an orphanage until she was able to get him out. But he was there for quite a long time. He learnt independence there. So sometimes what they're here to experience. So if they're here to experience how to learn to love and have joy, often they'll be put into a situation the opposite, so that they can release all that. And often the thing they need to release, which comes up in this session, is I have to release all my anger, all my bitterness. And so as they release that, then they find the other. So it's some really interesting information that comes up about that. I show you how to re-imprint that birth so the client feels connected and complete. And I connect with and transform the subconscious memories of birth, the bonding instinct, show you how to awaken the cingulate gyrus after birth, and the importance of this. And I've just lost my little, oh, here it is, so I can click on to the next one. Okay, so week 5, working with a pregnant woman and future pacing her baby's birth. I think I probably already told you enough about that. It just opens up your heart to do it. I can't think of another way of saying it. It's just so richly rewarding to work with someone. And I know Angela, who has given me permission to show you her video that I did with her, she was so disconnected with her baby. And she said to me, she gave me a big hug at the door, and she said, oh, for the first time, I'm okay about having this baby. And she said, I feel so connected with it now. So that just opens up my heart. It just makes me feel that all the study, and it's just been worth it. Okay, post-traumatic stress disorder after birth. The statistics for this are quite high. I was listening to something the other day, and it was like, oh, really? As many women as that have it. I can't remember what the actual statistics were, but it often affects the bonding of the mother and the child. And this is, of course, another factor in a child's physiological development. So women, I'm going to go through why women with a history of post-traumatic stress are at increased risk for a traumatic birth. And that is, and part of that is because if they've been held down, for example, if they've been a perceived victim of rape and they've been held down and been raped, the moment doctors maybe hold the woman in a certain place, or it actually activates all their stuff from the trauma before. So it's really important to clear all that sort of stuff. And also if they've had a very traumatic birth, like my daughter had an incredibly traumatic birth. She tried to do the calm birthing stuff so much, and she was like, seriously, it felt like days of this labour. The baby was posterior, and then in the end, she was able to deliver naturally, but it was under emergency conditions with 5 doctors around her, and the doctor having to put his hand up and move the baby, cut the cord while it was in there, and then forceps it out, twist it all and bring it out. So it was an incredibly traumatic experience for her. So it was really important. It was a delicious honour for me to be able to work with her, especially this is a young woman who really isn't into the work that I do. One of my daughters is, and the other of my daughters is not particularly. So if a mother has prolonged suffering while giving birth, I've got another beautiful client who's now, and she came to me pregnant, and when she found out she was pregnant with her second child, she was so distressed because the first labour was so difficult, and she just couldn't bear to think that she would be going through something even half as bad as that again. And her doctor, in his wisdom, predicted that it wouldn't be an easy labour for her. So we went and cleared all the post-traumatic stress that she had after the birth of her first child, the disconnection she had as a result of that. We went and healed the whole birth of her first child. Which I could have done. Okay, let me just go back to where we are. Okay, so...
No, too far. That one.
Okay, so I was talking about the post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is actually quite a big one for a lot of women. So if you can clear stuff up before they've had their baby, that's fantastic. It makes it much easier. But if you can't, as I say, it's never too late to heal. I've got a few women who are going through separation and stuff, and they're ex-husband is not behaving very kindly to them or their children, and they feel quite powerless, and they can't change what their ex-husband's doing. I know that. They know that. But at least, as I'm letting them know, we can heal as much as we can here in this office with you and your children. And when they're a little bit older, you can do some of the work on them, you know, tap. I had a police officer, and I did 3 sessions with him for post-traumatic stress, which was probably one of the most successful sessions I've ever had, because after one session, he was off his, he was able to reduce his medication. He had slept for the first time in 4 years through the night, and all his nightmares stopped. After the 3rd session, he's back in the line of fire, and I mean the line of fire. He's one of those who bursts into the house with, you know, all guns blazing when people are being held hostage and all of that. But he hadn't been able to work for quite a long time. So in 3 sessions, we healed all of the post-traumatic stress. But his little boy, his little child woke up with nightmares one night, and he was actually able to use it on his child. And when he rang me, he was so excited, because when he said to the little one the next day, "Oh, I'm so sorry you woke up screaming with your nightmare," the little one just said, "I didn't do that, Daddy." He said, "I remember you tapped on me and I was dancing," you know, because he flipped the memory just as a result of doing this work. So if we can teach our mums how to do this with our children, how wonderful is it? What a gift. I felt so grateful to have been able to give that father that gift for his children. So each week will be interactive with time for questions and answers and sharing of progress.
Ask everyone to mute Judy, because Di's put up his headline coming through.
Oh, okay. If everyone can mute themselves, that
Can
would
you
be...
mute everybody?
I'm sure I can mute everyone, but I don't know how to do that yet. So there'll be lots of sharing. And this is what you'll receive. I mean, as well as today getting some information, you will receive, it'll advance practitioner skills. I knew there's a spelling error there. That's the school teacher and me picking that up. It'll open up more opportunities for you to work with your clients, because I have absolutely noticed that. And you'll find that people who've had the work will send their clients. Like 99% of all my work is just based on people telling other people. Even this week, and I always ask, "Oh, how did you find out about me?" And even this week, someone came and I did some wonderful work with. And when I said, "Who told you?" she said, "Oh, my friend Linda." And I said, but Linda's never even seen you or met you, but someone told her. And so that's the way it will start to work as you get more and more advanced with your skills. And I know we are all advanced anyway, but this just adds a little bit of icing to the cake. You'll receive the latest research, and even when finished with this course, you'll have access to the closed Facebook group to access more information. You'll receive the step-by-step master sheet for the actual process. You'll watch a session with me working with a pregnant woman, and a session with me working with a client to release the issues surrounding their own birth. So you'll actually be able to watch all that. So I either work with one of you to release the issues around your own birth if someone volunteers, or it's probably better if I can do one in my office and tape it, and then as I'm showing it to you, break it down and stop it at various points, so to discuss stuff with you so you actually really understand what's happening. So it's a 6-week course if you're interested in doing it. So because you watch this, you get a webinar special. So I've got an early bird discount. I think it's $330, which includes all the tax. $330 US to do the course. The early bird special, which I'm not sure when that runs out. You can check it out on my website. That is $275 US. But for doing this webinar, if you put this code in here, webinar, so capital W with lowercase the rest, in the coupon section for your discount, then I've reduced it to $250. I will give you receipts, and on the receipt I have career coaching or career training. So depending on where you live, you'll be able to claim that. In Australia, I've never had anyone who hasn't been able to claim it. Overseas, I have no idea. I'm assuming you'll be able to, because when I do training overseas, I certainly claim that here in Australia. So are there any, if you want to unmute yourself and ask me any questions, even with that little hiccup, I'm still in time. I like to keep to time if I can. Are there any questions for people? Anything anyone wants to know? Yes.
Judy, I do. I actually am the mother of an adopted child who came
Yep.
to me at 2.5 years old. So 2 things. One, can you talk a little bit more? Because I don't think we know, well, we don't know who the birth father is. I don't think the bio mother is sure of who the birth father is. So,
Okay. So do they come from a different culture?
they're American, but yes, it's a different culture.
So did they have a different language?
No.
Okay. So so basically there, if I would be working with, so how old is your little one?
He's now 14, but he came here when he was 3.5 to my home.
Okay. So what happened in the first 3.5 years? Do you know?
He was with the bio mom or the bio grandmother, or she would just drop him off other places.
Okay.
So it was a little bit traumatic.
So is your child, would he or she be willing to do some work, or would it need to be done through you?
Well, that was my second question, was the surrogate. Rarely is he willing to do work with me, but he's getting older.
So at 14, if the child's willing to do the work, it's great to do it on them. So for example, I had a 14-year-old girl who was adopted at the age of 4 from Thailand, and she was a chronic bedwetter and suffered a lot of anxiety. So for the first 4 years, she was in an orphanage in Thailand. So I worked with her, and I know one of the memories I worked with her was on being locked in a box. Whenever she was perceived as being naughty or noisy, they'd lock her in a box. And I'm sure there were lots of other things. So I went, and because she was old enough for me to work on, and she had memories of stuff, I was able to work and clear all that. And what I did was, and so if you ever do the birth with go through and get someone to do the birth with you with your child, it's not, you can actually do a lot of the work through surrogately. I don't recommend you try and do it on yourself. I think you need someone to guide you through it. Even if I've got any big issues, I get someone to guide me through it, because I get diverted. Okay. Whereas when I'm with a client, I'm totally there. But when I'm with myself, I'm not, because I'm a bit of an auditory digital. Okay. So let me have a think. So you could actually get someone to work with you and go in and clear any of the things that you picked up from him, any of the things that you remember. But the secret with when you get the birthing is you birth him when you can actually imagine. If you do the course, you'll understand how this works better. But as he's being birthed, you're in the delivery room, even though I know you weren't. But from this you are, and he's given to you, and you do all the bonding with him. Okay, so that's what we've done. So that's what I've done with children who are adopted. I always ask first if that's what they would like, but I've never had anyone who says, no, I don't want my, I mean, if they really, really didn't like their adopted parents, that would be different. But I've never had anyone who has not wanted to be bonded and have their singular gyrus, awakened with their anyone but their adopted parent. Okay.
Great, thank
help?
you.
Yeah.
Yes, very much.
Any other questions? Okay, so I've left that offer up until the 28th of October. Just remember, Australia is ahead of America. So, for example, I'm not sure where you are right now, but it's 8:30 a.m. here now in Adelaide. I always put Sydney times up for webinars because everyone knows Sydney. I'm not sure everyone knows Adelaide. We're a much smaller city. So just be aware that discount will be available until then. That will give people, I've got quite a lot of people who contact me, an opportunity to catch up with this webinar if they'd like to. So if there are not any more questions, yes, Di.
Judy, can I just ask what time the webinars will be held?
It'll be this time. If I have
Okay.
enough people from Europe who would like to do it, I will also do another time to slot in for the European people. But at this stage, I'm doing it at this time. I did some research on that, and it's like it's early for Adelaide, 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock for you, Lolita, I think it would be. But
Yes,
it
that's
seemed
right.
to be the time that was best for most people.
Yes, lovely.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
Judy, what's the date of this first one?
Oh, so the first one starts next Friday.
Okay.
So it's exactly 7 days from today, and it goes for 6 weeks.
Yes, we just convert that 250 US into Australian dollars.
I sent the Australian people an email yesterday.
Yep,
If you didn't get that,
I did, but I didn't know how to.
okay. So if you pay, the Australian people pay. So ring me after dark, please.
Yeah.
Or I'll ring you. The Australian people pay. This is only if you pay on credit card or PayPal. But the Australian people can just do a cash transfer, which overseas people can't. Okay, so
Right.
please, if you're in Australia or know anyone who's interested who is, make sure you contact me, okay? Because you have a different way of paying. Okay? And I did send an email out yesterday that explained that, but maybe I didn't make it clear enough. That's quite possible. Any other questions?
I didn't get an email, but I'll send you another one. And
Okay,
ask you-
Doreen, I think it might be because when I sent you an email, it bounced back to me. I obviously had the wrong address and I didn't get it. So that's why I clicked you on Facebook and sent you the link.
Okay, no
So-
problem. I'll resend it to you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so either I, and even your phone number. When I entered it in, I must have put the wrong numbers or something.
Okay.
Okay, so I apologise about that. I'm happy to see you here. So I am really grateful to you all for taking the time out to watch this. It's something I'm quite passionate about. I've chatted to Sharon King about doing this, and she said she's more than happy for me to do it as long as I acknowledge her. So I have, and I will be, because she has certainly helped me enormously. And I would recommend her book, and I know quite a few of you have already bought her book, which is called Magical New Beginnings by Sharon King. Her stuff is based on EFT and matrix reimprinting. And also for the Australians, I just want to give her a plug. She is coming to Adelaide, I reckon it's March, and she's actually going to be, I'm hosting her doing a workshop here. It's not on birth, but it'll be on, she does some amazing stuff like with the light matrix and all stuff like that. So she'll be doing something in relation to that, but I will certainly let you all know that closer to the time when I've actually got exactly what she's doing and the exact date. So she's amazing and definitely worth booking that time aside to do it. Okay, so any questions?
Judy?
Yep.
For your very first one, I think you've done an amazing job.
Oh, thank you, Annette.
And thank you for sharing this, because I for one, have found it extremely interesting, and I think it's such a valued part of our learning is to work on this particular area. It frightens me a little bit because I think that, wow, there's so much to learn and so much to know. But yeah, I think it's such a valuable area to go into. So
I'm so grateful to hear you say that. There are so many times leading up to this, I was like ready to just go, I can't do this. You know, just not only the amount of work to put it together, but the technology. Give me a person in front of me or a crowd of people and I'm happy to work with them. But, and the fact that I did have a couple of hiccups with it today, and I'm very grateful to Scott for helping me with that because, yeah, anyway, so thank you, I appreciate that. And that's why I did say at the beginning, hey, this is, I'm new to doing a group Zoom. So, and also I'd love to give Kim Jewell, even though she's not here, she's actually coming to the course. She had something else on today she'd already promised to do, and Kim Brown. Kim, are you in Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah. She has been an enormous help to me too. So, so I just want to give you a big thanks. So anyway, it's there if you're interested. I'll hope to see you next Friday morning for me, same time. and to have that engagement over the next 6 weeks. So there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions. And you know, for the next 6 weeks, certainly I'll be posting. Once you've signed up, I'll pop you on the closed Facebook page, and I'll be popping things on there for you to have a look at, etc., and giving you lots of not only information but practical steps of how to go about doing this, because I'm a very practical person. What I found is I don't create anything. I take what other people have, you know, like Bruce Lipton's research, Sharon King's stuff, all of that. I take it and I put it to a working model. That's the gift I've had, and it's probably with all my years of teaching and being a curriculum writer in the education department, etc. I don't make up stuff. I'm just, quite frankly, not that clever. But what I do is I put things together to be able to present it so that it's a working model for people. So
and Judy, just as you leave now, just anyone that has any problems logging in or whatever, just email Judy at judy.com. No, was it judy.timpson@gmail.com?
gmail.com. Yeah, I should have probably had that
and
up.
then we'll fix it up.
Yeah.
Bye.
And Scott, that's my husband there. Thank you, Scott. He handles all my back end stuff, because I go, oh, I don't know what to do here. Okay.
And Judy, how long does each session go for?
Each one is an hour and a half.
Thank you.
And they will all be taped and obviously put to, and I will be putting them on my website, as well as putting them on. And so my website's just here, findingfreedom.com.au. So I'll be putting them on my website for you to have a look at any time. And once you've...
And you go to the page online courses.
Yeah, online courses, which is on the first page. You'll see it says online courses, and you will also find I will be updating things there, and also on the closed Facebook page there'll be lots more information coming as we go. Okay. Well, I'll sign off now, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Judy.
I'm so grateful I wasn't talking to a blank screen.
Thanks, Judy.
Bye.
Thanks, Judy.
And remember, Australians, please contact me if you're unsure about what to do, but please pay with a bank deposit, and I'll explain why to you when you contact me. Okay, if you haven't already twigged that from the email I sent. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ron.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.